All right, welcome to this particular video that will help us to know more about a legend in as far as African football is concerned, in the name of Godfrey Yuka Chitalu. And those of you that missed the first meeting we had via Zoom, we did talk about him and the impact he had in as far as football is concerned in Africa as well as at global level. In this second video, we'll look at the lost legacy. There's plenty of stuff that we'll be able to look at because he's a life that needs to be celebrated, and the record that he set for himself, unbeatable records that must be talked about and for people to know about it, not only here in Zambia, but many parts of the world as well. I've got a rich list of guests who will be able to talk to us about this legend who would have been 73, if I'm not mistaken, today, the 22nd of October. And we know that he perished together with the fallen heroes in 1993 on the evening of the 27th of April, when Zambia was traveling to play a qualifying as far as the 1994 World Cup was concerned with Senegal in Dakar. So many memories that we can bring back. Many of us were not alive at that time, but we can learn one or two things. I'll quickly go straight to Satish, who brought up this particular idea to ensure that we celebrate this legend. Satish, I can see you. Before we introduce and give an opportunity to many that are here to talk to us about this great player to have ever played on the continent of Africa, what prompted you once again to come up with this particular idea?
I decided that it was time that.
It was that.
Sorry? Right.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I decided to put this event together because Godfrey Chitalu is not just a Zambian icon. He's not just a Kabwe Warriors icon. He's not just an African legend. He is a football legend, full stop. He should be given the dues that he has earned. He is Africa's goal king, but he's more than Africa's goal king. He's actually the world's goal king. But there is much, much, much more to him than just a striker who was able to score a number of goals. I was looking into this, and everything I was finding was saying that far from Chitalu being overrated, he was actually criminally underrated. And that I also saw that the one time you could actually show that the record belonged to an African, because the records were actually good enough to do this, was Chitalu. But even him, it doesn't cover his whole career. It's just 1972. The records are fantastic and way above what you'd normally expect to find. But the rest of it doesn't do him justice. So what I wanted to do was to deal with a lot of aspects of his character and of his football. And that was why we started with the impact that he had on African football. And now we're going to talk about the lost legacy. These are the things that people don't really talk about. To give an example, the Sakafa Cup record, where he's got 11 goals in the tournament. Nobody talks about this. And it's actually a fantastic record. That's just one. So I'd rather pass over to back to you, and then we can carry on with the program.
That's right. Thank you very much. A brilliant idea, if you were to ask me. In the first video, we did hear what the Zambian national soccer team coach had to say about Godfrey Yuka Chitalu in the name of Milutin Sredojevic, who says it's privileged to be coaching a team that produced such a player. And I believe that we can have, that particular video, take a listen before everyone else comes in, and you will also be able to guide us as into who has managed to come through, especially those that haven't. Satish, coming from Nigeria, as we all know that a bit of a challenge in Nigeria right there. For now, let's take a listen to Mr. Mitchell, who had something to say. Regards, the African legend in Godfrey
It was not
Chitalu.
pleased and privileged to be national team coach in the country where legendary Godfrey Chitalu writing with the golden letters uh, history of Zambian football. I would like to use this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation with a simple say. Some people could die, but they will forever live in the hearts, souls, and mind of Zambians and Zambian football. In that regard, my sincere appreciation to Godfrey Chitalu for all what he has done, as he has engraved himself in the history. He has set the foundation. The rest of us that we are at present in charge of the football, we have the platform, we have the foundation on what to build on. Sincere, may his soul rest in peace.
Indeed, may his soul rest in peace. I don't know if everyone was able to see the video. I didn't see the video. We'll appreciate if later during this particular video you will be able to do that, Satish. We are unable to have certain people, especially from Nigeria, because of the challenges that the country is going through. Satish.
I will do that again in a minute. Let me try this again because I think I made a mistake by not sharing it. Let's see if it works now.
We were not pleased and privileged to be national team coach in the country where legendary Godfrey Chitalu was writing with the golden letters history of Zambian football. I would like to use this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation with a simple say. Some people could die, but they will forever live in the hearts, souls, and mind of Zambians and Zambian football. In that regard, my sincere appreciation to Godfrey Chitalu for all what he has done, as he has engraved himself in the history. He has set the foundation. The rest of us that we are at present in charge of the football, we have the platform, we have the foundation on what to build on. Sincere, may his soul rest in peace.
That's right. That's the video, of course, where the national team coach for Zambia is also adding a word to the life that we are celebrating today, the 22nd of October, 2020. And we know that he would have been 73 in terms of age. Satish, I'll get back to you. The message, coming from Nigeria, and obviously knowing that we have to be behind them, making sure that our brothers and sisters are safe in that particular country.
I will do that now. Nigerian legend and AFCON winner Segun Odigbami has said from Nigeria, where he is very active over what's happening. This is what he had to say. As you may have observed, there is a massive crisis in my country. It is of a dimension we have never experienced before. Lives are being lost and property being damaged. There is the threat of anarchy in the land. As a Yoruba leader, we have been involved all day in developing a strategy of reaction and how to deal with the situation. I am deeply involved. I will therefore not be able to attend to this very important program of yours. Kindly convey my best wishes to Chitalu's family and friends. Segun Odigbami.
All right. And we are together with them. We can only wish them, peace as they ensure that the country remains stable during this trying moment. And the leadership, as well as the citizens themselves, to make sure that they unite for the purpose of Africa. And unity of purpose is what we would love to do. And that's the more reason why we talk about the game that unites people, which is football today. And obviously, I would love to get a few people as I introduce them. I've got Rich panelists, if I may be able to tell you. There's a Chisanga Pule, who happens to be the former executive member of Kaya Warriors and Lusaka Dynamos, currently running and vying for a position as first chairman in Central Province. In our midst, also we have Bweza Nimbewe, who is a football blogger, and Satish likes to call him an upcoming journalist who is doing pretty well for himself. And not forgetting Ponga Liwewe, the son to the legend in terms of commentating, that is Dennis Liwewe. He's not new to radio, TV, football administration, marketing, and stuff like that. He's also part of us. We've got Maka Metcalf, a football fan, who says he writes about football as well. George Rwandamina, the former coach for Zesco United, is the former coach for the Zambia national soccer team as well. He's coached a team in Tanzania in the name of Yanga. Jason Malaisho also joins us, a lifetime supporter of Kabwe Warriors, the team that was once for the legendary Godfrey Yuka Chitalu, where we learn about him scoring unbeatable record in terms of goals. Yeah, so we have him as well. And we have Howard Gayle, who is the former Liverpool player himself. What more can I say when you have such a rich panel in terms of this discussion? To begin with, let me start with Ponga Liwewe. I've got a book in my hands written by Dennis Liwewe, and as you know, that a story for Yuka cannot miss. He's somebody you know very well, probably with your experience, the father of yours, writing about such players. What memories do you have for the legend in as far as African football is concerned, based on yourself and your father's story? Okay, we don't seem to be having Ponga Liwewe.
My fault. I didn't unmute properly.
Thank you, Satish, for letting me unmute myself. Firstly, I would like to recognize the presence of Howard Gayle, and I almost jumped out of my seat when I saw him. Of course, I've not personally met you, Howard, but I've read about you, and as a young boy growing up in Zambia, where English football was very much a large part of our upbringing alongside our local football, the name instantly rang a bell. And obviously you were the pioneer, one of the pioneers who opened up the door for a whole host of Black players, including African players who are shining today. So much appreciation to be on the same panel as you, and of course, all the other members on the panel. But just to say that when I was growing up as a little boy, and you've mentioned my dad was a commentator, he would talk about this Chitalu, and it was a name that instantly, caught my attention because he regularly spoke about Chitalu, his greatness, his goals, his contribution. Now, at an early age, when you're about 7, 8, you don't really, it doesn't really dig in. But later on, when I started to watch football and go to the stadium and saw Chitalu for myself, then and only then did I fully appreciate, what the man meant to Zambian football. I mean, his mere entrance into the stadium would bring thousands to their feet. And both the national team and Kabwe Warriors had this thing where all the other players would come in and Chitalu would sit behind and everybody would be wondering, is he in the lineup? Is he starting? And the minute he came running through onto the field, it was something else. It was explosive. Thousands and thousands of people screaming and shouting. That was the impact of Chitalu to the fans. The love they had, his contribution on the pitch. I mean, Zambia, I recall one game, I think I was about probably 13, 14 years old. Zambia playing Algeria in an Africa Cup qualifier and Chitalu scoring 2 goals. Now, you must understand, this is the Algerian team that went on to play against West Germany 2 years later in the World Cup and beat West Germany by 2-1. Could have qualified for the next round had West Germany and Austria not connived to keep out the Algerians. And here was Chitalu scoring 2 goals easily and tormenting that side. So it showed you the quality of the man. And I could go on and on, but I'll let the other members of the panel come in and, of course, contribute a little bit later to Chitalu's illustrious football history.
Um, so Gasper, he's disappeared. Oh well, I'll deal with this for the moment. In that case, Boisani, can you come in and well, say what you know about him as a young man who probably didn't get the chance to see him play that much, if you saw him at all. What do you think of him and his legacy? He's not getting the message. Damn. Okay, we better try somebody else. Right. Howard, can you comment now? What is going on? Howard, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, carry on.
Yeah, well, it's again, as I say, the conversations that we've had today are systematic with where and how we are as a culture. We've never tended to tell our own history. We've always told the history, or our history has always been told by our colonial masters. And for me, growing up again, I only found out about Chitalu, must be 18 months ago, and that came from you, Satish. We were brought up on the likes of Pele and that great Brazilian side. We weren't aware of African football. Again, the history of African football, again, has always been subdued and lamented, whereas it's been in a place where there's records and information about achievements of our culture as Africans. Again, our story has never been told. I would have loved to have been able to see Godfrey. Growing up as a young boy in England, when the World Cup came round, I always supported Brazil because Brazil had people who looked like me. And I'd go out on the streets like all children would do after a game or a game in the World Cup, and you'd want to be those players who were playing, and I was the best player because I was Pele, and Pele was the best player in the World Cup. So again, as I say, from a historical point of view, is that this is a huge piece of our history that needs to be told, and it needs to be out there, and we all should take a role in this. It can't be just left to historians. Again, it must be then those of us who were coaches within the games, with the people that we're working with, is that make them aware of the fact-based truth of a man who's the record goal scorer in world football, and yet there are people behind the scenes that are trying to deny him this record, and they're trying to stall what is evidently the facts coming out. So I think that you're doing a great job with this, Satish. And as I say, we all need to sort of like give a hand where we can in getting the facts out to people, because I'm sure again that there are millions of people in Europe that don't realise and don't know the truth about the planet's top goal scorer. And a lot of people again will be winning quizzes or answering questions in quizzes on this, and they'll be getting the wrong answer because they'll put up it's Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, and it's neither of those two. It's somebody again who's one of our own. He's an African, and he's not only he holds the record, he's surpassed it by a country mile. So again, why is he not being recognised for his endeavour and his contribution to world football? Because again, that's what the football fraternity is about records and how they record those records. And here is one from the very beginning, which belongs to us as Africans. And it needs to be us that has to tell this story and tell these facts out into the right quarters.
Okay, Chibilka Humphrey, I'm trying to unmute you, but you have to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
I think that's how this works. If you unmute everybody, they have to unmute themselves to come into it.
Yeah, but he's not unmuting himself.
He most probably can't hear you.
I've asked, sent the message to him to unmute.
Yeah.
Oh dear, he's not getting it. We'll have to, we'll go elsewhere then. Right, Jason, can you hear me? Jason? Oh, this is just not working. Right, I'll try Ponga again while I try and work out what's going on. Right, Ponga, can you just explain some of the unknown records and contributions that Godfrey Chitalu.
Hi, Satish.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let Jason go first. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, I think I was talking. I didn't realize that my speaker, my mic was on mute.
Right. They're all on mute until I ask you to unmute.
Excellent.
Right.
All right. No, thanks.
What I'd like to ask you is, as a Kabwe Warriors fan, how big a deal was Godfrey Chitalu to you growing up and now?
All right. So Satish and team, thank you so much for putting this together. This really means a lot. I received a notification earlier, and my question was, I wish I was informed, like a week ago. I would have blasted that invitation to most of the guys from Kabwe, because there's a group, a WhatsApp group for all the former Kabwe guys where we normally get together and see and explore how we could actually help out Kabwe town. But nevertheless, to answer your question, I was born in Kabwe, I was raised in Kabwe and did part of my primary and secondary school in Kabwe before I moved to varsity in Lusaka and South Africa and London. But just having grown up in Kabwe, the one thing that we did, Satish and team, was play football and a bit of swimming. Now, I was privileged to be, neighbors to quite prominent footballers. And Mr. Yuka Godfrey Chitalu, we were on the same street. And we got inspired and we idolized the man. He would always walk from his house to the training ground, which is now the Yuka Godfrey Chitalu Stadium, named after him. He didn't want to get on the Zambia Airways bus. So we could actually go to his house, by his gate, wait for him. As he steps out of his yard, would actually pick up the bag and walk him all the way to Royal Stadium. And those are the vivid memories that when I think of Yuka, I always think about him and the great memories we shared. He was, he wasn't just extraordinary. He gave time to us as youngsters. I remember at the age of 14, 15, he would actually allow all the young Warriors players to go and watch Kabwe Warriors play at the Royal Stadium. And we became inspired because of just watching him coach the team. I think I was very young. I wouldn't claim that I saw him play. I think he must have left playing soccer probably in the 1981-82. But Ponga, I'm sure, would be able to advise when exactly he left. But I don't remember watching him. I remember watching him as a coach. And I read a lot about what he did for Kabwe Warriors. My suggestion and probably my proposal to you, Satish and team, I would suggest that we do this again at a larger scale. I think we need definitely to celebrate Yuka. It could be this year or next year, where we call all the old prominent players just in his honor. But I think, so those are the sweet memories that I have. I can go on and on when we're talking about Kabwe Warriors and Yuka Godfrey Chitalu for the impact that he had for not just Kabwe, but the entire continent as well. So thank you so much, Satish, for the invitation. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Howard, you actually said something very similar in the previous one. So how do you feel about what Jason has just said?
Yeah, and again, as I say, totally right behind it. one of the things again that you hear me buzzing on about all the time is that we don't tell our own history. We let other people tell it for us. Well, here's an ideal chance for us now, whereas we can organise a festival, designate his birthday as the Godfrey Chitalu, which goes right across Africa. We should celebrate it again with a festival type sport, and again we could have a cup competition that could be rolled out in his honour. And again, as I say, that message now will go around Africa, because what goes with the cup competition goes to history, and what goes with the history is the knowledge where people are introduced into a knowledge that they haven't got or they haven't got access to. But we have to get into a habit of telling our own story instead of letting other people tell it for us. And I think again the work that you've done, Satish, on this, because I know that you're very dogged on this, and you've refused in some places again to accept that there wasn't any information there. You've dug it out. So I think again we can all be thankful that we've got somebody like you on our side. And I think that we do need to take this to a bigger audience and a bigger stage, where again, and I think again, it's something again around the developments of the future, is that everybody needs to have a hand in it or a voice in it, rather than it be just a selective group. Is that we have to change the way, the mindset that we've had for the last 450 years. We've now started again, so we need to start working with each other. We have got the expertise amongst us, whether it be through the history and the fact base, whether it be through coaches, and certainly again, what we have is again, we've got a wealth of talent that not only originates out of Africa, but originates out of Black communities all around the world. So I think in the vision of moving this forward, I think if there's one thing that we need to decide today is how we can take this forward, and what direction we're gonna go with it, to the aims and the achievements that this should be in all local schools. Any school that plays football, whether it be in Africa, Europe, the Americas, this should be as part of the education program of somebody who holds the record for World International Football for goals, is that the person that you've been told is not the truth. This is who it is. And I think that we can all help him protecting that.
Right. Walia Chitalu is one of Godfrey's daughters, is on here now. Could you say what you think? I mean, you obviously knew him better than all of us put together. So can you talk us a bit about him and his legacy, how he was as a person in and outside of football, but more outside? You have to unmute yourself.
Hello, sorry, I was just a bit held up. I was just wrapping up with work. You were saying something, Satish?
Yeah, I was asking you about, to tell people a little bit about how he was as a father and as a person, not just a footballer, because we hear about his football achievements all the time. We don't hear much about him as a person.
Okay.
This is about African footballer who was outscored Messi. They say that Messi scored the top things. It's about him. He was killed in a plane crash.
Yo, you need to turn your mute off. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
That's it. Go on, sister.
Sorry, Satish. Is it possible if maybe I speak later on?
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm sorry. I'm held up a little bit,
It's
but I
okay.
can follow. Though I'll speak a bit later on.
Yeah, it's no problem. I'll come back to you. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Boizani, can you unmute yourself and come in and speak a little bit about what did Chitalu mean to you as you were growing up and making your name as a young journalist or blogger, if you prefer, but I still think you're more a journalist.
Yeah, I understand. Personally, I would talk more of what Ponga Liwewe said. By the time Godfrey Chitalu was during that crash, that was 93, I was just 18. I had already started following Zambian football, but I had never watched Godfrey Chitalu. Now, the attachment with me and Godfrey Chitalu actually was because of Dennis Liwewe. Okay, because during the funeral of Godfrey Chitalu, of course, during that disaster, he was actually put on national TV, where he was giving the biography of all the players that were involved in that crash. When he reached at Godfrey Chitalu's biography, Dennis Liwewe shed tears. And the passion that he used to describe Godfrey Chitalu was just so amazing. And because of that, I started getting a lot of literature, even some of the literature that Ponga Liwewe, one of the panelists here, wrote on Godfrey Chitalu. And after hearing a lot about him, this is the reason as to why I actually got so close to Satish. Because finally I found someone who really brought out a lot about this legend, who a lot of Zambians actually don't know. For me, he is the reason I'm blogging about Zambian. For me, he is the reason I'm in this business. Was with this man. I visited the office of Andrew Kamanga, the current president right now, and if you look at his picture, one of the pictures that are in that office is of Godfrey Chitalu. When I asked him, he had a personal experience with him. So my passion into football was actually because of these people that learned a lot on Godfrey Chitalu, Ponga Liwewe, Dennis Liwewe, Kalusha Walia, Andrew Kamanga, just a lot. So this is the reason as to why I feel us as people that write about Zambian football, this is an opportunity. And I really want to thank you, Satish. This is an opportunity that we can actually get as much detail as possible. Even if we didn't see him play, we now have a lot of information that we can actually put out there for people to know. Because, it depends when we're talking about all these records. You look at international news blogs, international news forums, but is not there. Okay, the only thing we have are the writings that Ponga Liwewe, there's Joe, we talk about Dennis Liwewe. That is the only literature that we have. And thank God there's Satish, who is not even Zambian. Okay, so if Satish can actually know more about Godfrey Chitalu, what about me, who is actually a phone call away from Ponga Liwewe? You understand? So for me, this is a very good start. And this is not going to end here. It is something that we can sit down, look at it, and say, how can we bring this name up again? So for now, Satish, that's my attachment to Yoka. And thank God, even in this broadcast, there's Ponga Liwewe, who I would call immediately after this show and to just see how I can meet him.
Well, I think we need to arrange that.
And get as much information as possible. Yeah.
Right. So, sorry, I interrupted you. I was going to ask Ponga now that Boizani has shown that you are one of his inspirations, how do you feel that you are securing the future of Zambian journalism and that Uka's name will live on thanks to you, your father, in a large part?
I should thank Bwezani. I don't think I've ever been praised so much in my life, so it's a privilege to say so. But I think he's also showing my years, 54. So I probably saw more of Chitalu than he did. But just to say that, you know, we throughout world sport, there's always a legend in a generation. We look at Muhammad Ali in boxing, we look at Michael Jordan in basketball, Usain Bolt in athletics. Now, Chitalu for Zambians, and I think to a certain extent, to Africans who were able to see him, because you must understand, we're talking about the 70s, and mass media then in Africa was very much in its infancy. But I'll give you an example of Chitalu's reach, because in 1972, Kabwe Warriors played against Accra Hearts of Oak of Ghana in the Champions Cup. We're talking about 1972 now. Abedi Pele, a young boy that time who went on to become three-time African Player of the Year. I was quite surprised when we were working on the 2010 World Cup bid in South Africa when Abedi mentioned Chitalu. And I said, you know Chitalu? He says, yes, of course. I mean, I watched him in 1972 when Kabwe Warriors played against Accra Hearts of Oak. Now, Howard might be able to recall. I'm not sure if he did the same thing in his time, but at the time, you know, players' socks were held up by a cord you tied around the top of your socks. And in Ghana, instantly they gave it the name Chitalu. Now when I was in Ghana in the first decade of 2010, and Abedi is talking about it, he says, yeah, that cord that we used to tie to keep up our socks, in Ghana they call it Chitalu. Because, you know, when he came here, he had such a huge impact against Accra Hearts of Oak. Everybody was in awe. And because he tied his socks and held them up with that cord, to date, they still call it Chitalu in Ghana. We're talking about a match played in 72, and we're talking about a discussion in 2012, 2013. So that was the impact. You know, no mass media, but the name Chitalu lives on in Ghana to this day. And of course, you know, he was explosive at home because Union Carbide, the company that no longer exists, used him for an advert. And in 72 advertising, again, Howard will tell you that sponsorship in football in 72, that era was really minimal. But Chitalu had a sponsored car, which was unheard of in Zambian football. The only player who had a sponsored car, who had a deal with Union Carbide for their batteries branded U-Car, which became Chitalu's nickname, U-Car for Union Carbide for the battery, because of the power the battery gave, and they called Godfrey Chitalu U-Car. To date, that's his name, U-Car Godfrey Chitalu, to the local fans. So hugely impactful and hugely influential in Zambian football. I mean, we would play against teams who we thought, oh, we're playing Algeria, and there would be Chitalu popping up to score 2 goals. We'd be playing against the Uganda Cranes in a World Cup qualifier. They've beaten us in Uganda. Chitalu comes in and scores 2 goals, you know, matches which we thought were lost. He was that sort of personality who individually could come and turn the course of a match. Now, you can count only maybe a handful of players in world football who have had that capability to individually influence a match. And Chitalu stands among the best. It's a pity that, you know, there's no recordings. And again, one of my projects is to go into CAF archives and see if there's even a little clip of Chitalu playing that can show the world what this man was able and capable of doing on the field.
Well, one thing I would like to add to this is, as I've said quite a few times, in relation to some of the lost records, in 1978, he was involved in AFCON for the second time. Only twice did he reach the AFCON finals. The first time he wasn't really given a fair chance, as the coach and he didn't really get on, and the tactics weren't that suited for him. In 1978, he plays in the AFCON finals for the second time, and he pulls a hamstring in the first match against Ghana, goes off in the first half. 5 days later, he plays against Nigeria. He's so important a player that the Nigerian coach was developing his tactics. His name is Yelisabchik, and he was the coach that took Nigeria to third place twice, losing his job just before, in 1978, just before they win the AFCON in 1980. He developed his tactics around stopping Chitalu when he went off in the first half in the first match. How do you see that as an indication of his ability, and is that part of his lost legacy that people don't know this and don't actually see that is how important a player he was.
Yes, I believe had he played in 1974, and he did come off the bench, I think one game in the 1974 Africa Cup of Nations. Now, Zambia had a Yugoslav coach called Ante Buselic, of course, who had just come into the country a year before. He decides that, Chitalu is a little bit individualistic in his play because now you must understand, Chitalu would get the ball and break through entire defenses, single-handedly power his way through face-to-face with the goalkeeper, put that ball in the net. Now, Buselic's philosophy is to pass the ball and move it around. So he was looking for a more mobile striker who shield the ball, play it back, move into space. Now, that was never Chitalu's game. Chitalu was a player who could, destroy defenses at will, through power, through pace, and through finishing. Now, Buselic had a different approach. So 74 Chitalu is not really given a fair chance to play. I must also give credit, though, to the striker who came in, Simon Kaushi, who did an equally great role he actually scored in the final and scored earlier. But again, people who have played the game will tell you certain coaches favor certain types of players. And the great Chitalu was in a sort of exile for 3 years, So between 74 and 77, Chitalu is no longer there. Then Buselic leaves in 77. Colonel Bright Obanda becomes the coach.
Your video seems to have frozen for a minute there, Ponga, so I will just add one of the things I was going to say about this is that in 1978, there was the Sakafa Cup tournament towards the end of the year. And that's the one where he scores 11 goals, which remains the Sakafa Cup record. What I was going to say is I asked the goalkeeper, because in the semi-final, Uganda lost 4-0. And he scored all the goals, all 4 goals in that particular tournament, in that match. That resulted, and the goalkeeper, Paul Sali, Uganda, you have to remember, lost the final to Ghana in AFCON. Yet you have Chitalu scoring 4 goals against him. This is what the goalkeeper, Paul Sali, had to say. Thanks for your intervention on that subject. For your information, that man, Godfrey Chitalu, was to me the deadliest striker I have ever faced in my football days. One incident I will never forget was in 1978 during Kekapa tournament in Malawi. He won the game against Uganda single-handed when he scored 4 goals in my goal, and the game ended 4-0 in favor of Zambia. That is what Paul Sali had to say about it. So I'm going, I don't know if Ponga is back yet. I'm hoping he is. No, he's, yes. Yes, he is, right. How do you feel that reflects Chitalu's legacy?
Yes, I was offline, but I just caught you talking about the Sakafa tournament, or the Eastern Central African Cup tournament there, where maybe now in East Africa, Chitalu is probably best recognized outside of Zambia because he did feature in that tournament for quite a few times, and East Africa were able to see what he was capable of. And again, those matches weren't televised in that era, but of course we had radio commentary, which brought some of the thrill and excitement. But the stories of Chitalu scoring 4, scoring, almost at will, against teams who were decent sides, I think showed what this man was capable of. Go to East Africa and some of the older guys, the generation of the late Dennis Obua, who played against Chitalu for Uganda Cranes. He became FA president in Uganda. And when I was there, the first question he would ask is, hey, that Chitalu of yours was a terror, So throughout East and Central Africa, at least, that region had the privilege and opportunity to see the great Chitalu. not so much in other parts of the world, an occasional game here and there for Cowboy Warriors, the Two Nations Cups where he wasn't really given the opportunity through injury and through the decision of the coach. But, those who did see him will tell you to this day that they've probably never seen a greater player in African football. Some of them even greater than some of the great names we hear about today.
Okay, Mark, where's he gone? I'll find him now. Right, Mark.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'll leave you to say what you wish to say.
Okay, a couple of things which people might be interested in from here. There's a new book out actually called Football's Black Pioneers, which charts the black footballers who first played for all of the current 92 English League clubs. Howard Gayle appears in this, in the Liverpool section in particular, and I would strongly recommend it, as it does bring to life very coherently the history of the first few black footballers. And just to repeat, last week or the week before last, very pleased myself to help Simon Mullock write a piece about Stan Horn, who played for Manchester City in the 67-68 season, which, as a result of the fact that he played 5 times, we've now in a position that he'd become the first black footballer to receive a league winners medal. We're hopeful that they will also extend that back to 1950 for a Portsmouth player, Lindy Delaforno, as well. A little bit about the difficulties of establishing new historical records, because I've managed to establish quite a few. To be fair, for example, established the very first league goal, which was Kenny Davenport in the September the 8th, 1888. It took over a decade to get that actually recognised, and then finally commemorated with a PFA plaque, which myself and Gordon Taylor unveiled back in 2016. Also managed to establish since then the player to score the very first hat-trick for England against Scotland. The reason why I say that is in doing these pieces of work, I've established quite a lot of credibility with academic historians, because I'm not an academic, I'm a work-class lad. And I'm sure if something was written, that some of those historians in England, Scotland and Wales would be happy to assist and to help take the story a little bit more widely than it currently is known. I noticed there's no book about Chitalu. Funny enough, the lad I was interviewing in between this meeting, a hospital worker in Blackpool, basically said to me that the lad he was working with was the brother of one of the players who perished in the aircraft disaster in 1993. So it is a small world, as they would say. I also did a little bit of research and worked out that Robert Earnshaw is from Zambian background. So he may be worth trying to contact in this country to actually see if he'd be prepared to join the campaign and to speak. Oh, he has written a book. I understand, written a book. I didn't know that. Thanks for that, Satish. In terms of the footage, surely the best possibility of getting some footage of him is him scoring against the Soviet Union in 1980. I'm sure there must be some coverage somewhere of that big event, of course, in the Soviet Union. And whilst I suspect the records and archives are not perhaps what they should be, there surely must be some.
Well, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Mark, but on that particular note, there is some footage, but journalists need to ask the IOC about it and see if we can actually get it back. Right, Mark, right. Okay. Right, you're upside down. Mark, you
just to see if I can help in some small way, then I'll do my best. I like exploring stories, and if I have managed myself to establish a recent record of doing historical pieces with Simon.
You seem to have frozen again, so
Yeah.
go to Howard now. Do you think that Godfrey Chitalu could have done it on a cold night in Stoke?
Again, that's one of the stereotypes that we've faced as a culture, as Black people, that they threw out. I think it was the Crystal Palace chairman, Ron Nodes, who quoted that again, that he never seen Black players on a cold Wednesday night going out to watch games. And the reason why Black players didn't go out to go and watch games is that there was no positions within the coaching system for us. So what's the point in going out to watch a game when you know that there's no pathway for you? But those are the stereotypes again that we had to endure here in Europe. And there's one other factor here again in relation to television footage, is that because most people in Europe only have black and white TVs, is that it was sometimes really hard to disseminate. I know for watching Paul Reaney at Leeds United, again, on a black and white television, it wasn't until, again, you had to look closely to see that he was Black. There was no mention of him by the commentator that he was Black. So again, these are the misfortunes again that we've had to endure and that we've had to deal with. But on the point of what this is all about, I'm learning so much information and stuff that's enlightening me. I think that this would make a great documentary to start off with. The reason why is that we've got people on here and around now who we can get information off. It's no use going for the information off them when they're passed into the next world. So we need to really be collating all that information now, speaking to his family, to people who've worked with him, to players who played with him, coaches who worked with him, even people again who knew him, and formulating again a program where maybe we could get to understand Godfrey a little bit more. But I think that it's a great moment, and it's something again that we have to do, because if we don't, we'll miss out on a generation. There's a lot of people on this forum now who've got information, who can tell a story about Godfrey. So again, why don't we tap into this and see whether we can get somebody to maybe sponsor it, or even there's a couple of the lads on here who are bloggers. I mean, we could even do it that way. But I think it's really important again that we get this knowledge out to the wider public, because again, it's a really important piece of knowledge. It's not something which is trivial. It's a fact base that counteracts a lot of the facts that FIFA, UEFA, and even the FA have.
There was a reason I asked you that question about Stoke, which Ponga will now explain exactly why I asked that question.
Now, I'm not sure if this is football folklore or whether it's true. It needs a lot of digging. But, from the number of people who have narrated the story, I personally believe there is some truth behind it, is that probably around the mid-70s, 76 or so, there was interest from Derby County Football Club to sign Godfrey Chitalu. Now, you must understand that during that era, Zambia was a socialist country. And the state really ran everything and decided everything. And the story is that Chitalu was denied by the government the opportunity to go abroad because he was considered national property. So he was property of the state of Zambia. He was a legend. He was, worshipped across the country. The country felt that Chitalu leaving Zambia would be too much of a big blow for Zambian football. And, what I believe is that this came all the way from the top. The number one office in the country, that Chitalu should not leave. And therefore, a wider audience was probably denied the opportunity to see the power, the skill, the elegance, the goal scoring capability of Godfrey Chitalu. But at the time, everything was the state. And Howard may remember socialist England in those days, the power of the state, until the policies changed, so the decision was that he should stay. And of course, the Zambian fans loved to have Chitalu because there would never, ever be a bigger name in Zambian football. Today, 2020, we're talking about 40 odd years plus. Chitalu's name is still out there as the greatest ever Zambian player. So the Derby County thing, had it happened, probably would have opened wider doors for African players, for Zambian players. But in Zambia, it was like taking away a demigod from the country, and that wasn't allowed to happen.
I'd heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Derby County actually came for Chitalu twice, and that they really, really wanted him, and that as you were alluding to, it was actually went all the way up to the president, Kenneth Kaunda, essentially saying, you are a national asset, you're not going anywhere.
Precisely. That is the story. And I would like to do a lot more research on that, to put the fine details on paper in the media so that maybe the world will understand that an entire country, was involved in the decision of losing their greatest ever player. And in those days, of course, travel wasn't what it used to be. If he had gone to England, we probably would not have seen him again for the rest of his career. So for the Zambian people, it was felt it would be too much of a blow to lose such a world standard, world class, once in a lifetime type of player. And he stayed in the end. And that was the decision.
Now, there's one thing about the Chitalu story, which is he is one of the great icons of Zambian and African history in football. But everybody thinks that it's the 1972 and that he was at his prime in 72 and 68. Yet something odd happens, and that is in his wilderness period in the national team, when it comes to an end, he actually scores more in the second half of his career, international career, in a shorter period of time than he does in the first part, where people think he's in his prime. What does that say about Buselic believing that he was finished?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Buselic had his own philosophy. Howard has played the game. Coaches have their own ideas of how it should be played, what sort of player he's looking for. We've seen this argument throughout world football. He stuck, Buselic took Zambia to the Africa Cup finals, without Chitalu. But I believe that maybe he should have said to himself, I've got such a great asset. Let me find a way, to play him. I believe that, yes, I like possession, I like movement, but in his deeper thinking, he should have come up with a way to utilize, a skill that is unique, that stands out head and shoulders above every other player, Zambia or possibly Africa has ever seen in terms of goal scoring. He should have found a way to utilize that.
That's like Barcelona saying to Lionel Messi, you're only going to be 2 touches. Don't have no more than 2 touches. That's what it's like. That's the equivalent of it today.
So, Mark, you want
to very, very quickly, a lad who would have come to the meeting today is a lad called Carl. He's a Derby lad, a Sikh lad. And if you go to Derby's ground, you'll see a lot of statues and plaques around. He's been the main inspiration behind those going up. And I'm sure that if you wanted to send me some details, I'll pass them on to him and he can have a look at the Derby story. I'm on the British Newspaper Archive, so I can have a look there, although I'm not too sure if they've actually got up to the 1970s yet, cataloguing all the newspapers, so that might be unproductive at this time. But Carl would certainly know, and the lads who write the books historically about Derby, they'd certainly know if the club was trying to sign him. You could, I'm happy to pass on their details, Gerald Mortimer and those sorts of people, and you can find out if that's the case, Cheers.
Just again on that point again, we're talking about stereotypes. well, the Indian culture in Europe now have the same stereotypes as what black people or black players have to, is that they don't like going out in the cold, they don't want to train when it's wet, they go missing when they're now starting to suffer the same stereotype. They don't come out of their own culture. And now again, here's another face of depression, of how we can keep people out of our game. When really again, you should be just on your ability, your skill level, what you bring to that forum, to that platform. Because again, the elite soccer players, again, they're good, but again, there's a lot of players who come behind them, and again, which in my opinion shouldn't be professional footballers, but they've been granted that place because of again, in some cases, again, colour, rather than we'd rather have a white player in here doing than trusting a black player. And a lot of clubs again would follow that format and still do follow that format again within European football. Well, listen, gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I've got to go now. Talking about coaching, I've got to go out and earn a coin. It's been really brilliant meeting you today. Hopefully, again, as I say, we can come together again on here again as soon as we can. And good luck to everybody and take care. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure. Great to meet you.
Now, Ponga, you've heard what Howard was saying and also what Mark was saying. Can you respond to Mark's offer of checking the Derby County story?
We would love that here in Zambia because, you know, a lot of the stories really need the backing of some sort of authentication from second sources. And I think that would really be hitting the nail on the head if we did get that information from the Derby County historians and archivists, etc., people who have been associated with the club during that era. That would be a great and wonderful thing to authenticate a story about Chitalu and Derby County. It would probably be enough to write a book about on its own.
Okay.
One other thing I was going to add to that is,
go ahead.
Has this been checked with the office of former President Kenneth Kaunda?
I don't think we have any verification, and I think that should be the next stage. You know, there's so much undocumented history, not only from football, but politically, from all walks of life, Zambian history, you know, and I believe that, you know, before our first president, who is now into his 90s, you know, before he reaches the last days of his life, that we really need to get all sorts of information, including the Chitalu story, from him and other people who work with him, go through the archives and dig deep. And I think that's the next phase. That's the next challenge for us who are close followers of African and Zambian football.
Okay, Walia, you've heard quite a lot about your father. How much of that did you know before tonight?
Well, we've heard quite a lot of stories. I've read a lot on the internet, and just from people, especially from that book that Jerry Muchimba had written. So most of the stuff that I have gotten to know throughout this whole journey is through the information that is given, like through the research that you have been doing, Satish. We have gotten to learn new things about him that we actually didn't know. Yeah.
So, Mark, how important do you think Godfrey Chitalu was, both to African football, but also to European football, in that it doesn't know enough about him? And even now, the record clearly belongs to Chitalu, even if you just take the season records, yet he doesn't seem to get credited in the way that he should. Having heard what you've heard tonight, or today, what do you think about him?
Well, I'm sorry to say I knew very little about him, apart from some brief things that you told me in the past. And that's a weakness on my part. And I suspect most people have not heard of the player, and that's pretty sad, isn't it? Really, that's all you can say. From my point of view, I'll try and assist to make up on my previous weaknesses. That's generally how I react to such events. So cheers.
So, Ponga, we haven't really talked about one of the other aspects of Chitalu's great legacy, and that is the coaching. As it's often said, great players don't make great coaches, yet he seemed to be on the way to showing that that is simply untrue, at least in his case. And it's quite an achievement as well, because given his reputation as a player and his so-called discipline problems, well, no, not so-called, he did have discipline problems as far as football would say. But when he went into coaching, he stopped players leaving when Kabwe Warriors got relegated. He brought them back to the top flight. He won a couple of cups and he beat Fred Mwila Sr. for the Coach of the Year award, even though Fred had won the Cup Winners, African Cup Winners' Cup, and also the Zambian League. How good a coach was lost in the Gabon plane crash?
Yes. Now during Chitalu's time, Kabwe Warriors was the biggest club in the Zambian league, and then sort of went into obscurity and oblivion, until probably about 1987, when one of the players who played with Chitalu, younger than Chitalu but had briefly a time to play with him, Bizo Piri, rebuilt the side. In 1987, Kabwe Warriors were league champions for the first time since the 70s. And then Bizo Piri left to go to South Africa. And that time, South Africa was banned from football. And he went to coach there and immediately received a ban. But what he did do was and I mean, the money there was lucrative. So quite a few players went, to play their career there, even though they wouldn't be able to play anywhere else in the world. So winning the league in 87, Bizo Piri took about half the team with him to South Africa, and Warriors went into decline immediately, losing over half their players. And then Chitalu became the coach, and out of the blue, out of nowhere, picked a crop of young players who were unheard of, unrecognized, unrenowned in Zambian football. And within a year, they were in the lower division, having been relegated after losing all those players. And then in the cup competitions, they suddenly start to beat all the Premier League sides 4-0, 3-0, get to cup finals. And, and everybody said, what is going on here? Where is this team from? Who are these players? Who are these guys? Never heard of them, And who are they with the audacity to beat Premier League teams when they're in the first division? I think Warriors won about 3 cups that year, 2-3 cups at least. And all that was Chitalu's work. And the following year, probably about half of those guys became renowned national team players. Timothy Mwitwa, Tenan Chilumba, Mabin Gaiwa, all those young guys were suddenly, making their way into the national team, and Kabwe Warriors were promoted back to the top league. They played a thrilling African Champions Cup game against Al Ahly. They had the Egyptian fans on their feet. This is a year later, cheering the Zambian team, which was unheard of for the style of play. And I think Chitalu did, something that not too many other coaches have been able to do, build a team out of nothing, turn players into top stars who suddenly become national team players. And then when Zambia, had a bit of a slump, who did they turn to coach the national side? Chitalu, because they'd seen the magic he had been able to create with Kabwe Warriors. And that really was we moved, because alongside another legend, Alex Chola, the belief was that 2 of them would take Zambia to the World Cup. And as a lot of people know, those who may not know, the crash happened as Zambia was traveling to a World Cup qualifying game where we lost, the great Chitalu, Alex Chola, all the other players, 18 players, officials, we only wonder what would have happened, what could have happened for Zambian football, because the truth was that a World Cup was around the corner with that team, and with the leadership of Chitalu and Alex Chola on the coaching team.
It has been asked previously, if it hadn't been for the Gabon crash, would Zambia have gone to the World Cup in 1994? Obviously, your opinion.
You can never say, obviously, you can never say certainly that it would have happened. But when you look at the facts, when you look at the form, when you look at, you know, the way the team played, the way the team was set up, the experience of the people on the bench, the will, you know, when you've never been to a World Cup, the will to want to go for the first time, and you have the players, you have the coaches, you have the national support, you have, you know, everything pointing in that direction. You have this massive belief, you know, and obviously a lot of it is emotion. And the wanting to win. But you know, probably I would say that was the team, looking at Zambian football history, that had the greatest potential ever to go to the World Cup. And obviously, the form in the qualifying games before that, the international matches before that, pointed towards that. It was a mix of youth, a mix of experience, great coaches, you know, and just a desire to say we had almost been there once or twice before. We believe that this crop of players, these coaches are going to take us to the World Cup. And the form showed in the build-up, because before that we had beaten Mauritius 3-0. Yes, we had drawn with Zimbabwe. We had won other qualifying games before that. But, you know, Zambia had been unbeaten for 14 years until 1989, you know, for a long time. And those coaches were part of that build-up, part of that legacy. And the belief was there that the World Cup was definitely within reach.
Your father was a great advocate of Godfrey's play, and some of his commentary is now as almost as legendary as Godfrey's play itself. Talk to us a little bit about Dennis's sort of relationship with Godfrey, and how he thought, what he thought of him in terms of, did he think he was the best player Zambia had ever produced?
I mean, he actually said those words, you know, so it's without doubt. There's no question that he believed that. I mean, you know, when Chitalu was growing up, and obviously Walia, his daughter, was a little girl, then probably not even born, you know, he had this unique play that thrilled people, you know, and I recall one piece of commentary. Chitalu was in front of the goalkeeper, having beaten the defense. You know, my dad, the commentator, was shouting, "It's a goal." And he said, "I'm shouting it's a goal before he scores because I know he is going to score." And Chitalu scored. It was that level of belief in the man, you know. Later on, he made a record, what we used to call an LP, you know. The new generation may have an idea what an LP is, with Chitalu on the cover and all the commentary, all the goals, all the action around Chitalu there. And it was a bestseller across the whole country. And the song about Chitalu that was put together on the same album. So he put him on a pedestal that he put no other player. And of course, you know, somebody earlier on spoke about the obituary where he broke down in tears when he spoke about Chitalu, you know, and he said openly in the obituary, no player has ever had the impact of Godfrey Chitalu in Zambian football.
This is for all of you. How do you think that the lost legacy, this is the things that aren't that well known about Godfrey Chitalu, should be commemorated, and how does that fit in with what we do know about him?
I think I'll let the others answer.
Wise move. Wise move.
I'm going to play a through ball to Mark.
Okay, I'll do my best. The only thing I can contribute in this stage is a small thing. If, as I said, if you want to send me the information you require in an English scene, I'll do my best to find out more about it. I would have thought that there would be some people in England who would be also keen to help and assist. But I mean, it has to be led, obviously, ultimately by, you know, people back in his home country, and we can, whilst we can do something, it by necessity it has to be led by the people from the place that he's from. I don't want to replace other people's leadership on it. No, that's not my style, to be fair. So I'll support the thing, and that's not a cop out. I'm not the sort of person that would cop out by any shape, form, or fashion on anything, to be fair. But that's just the principle it's got to be. So send us information. I'll try and circulate, and I'll try and get one or two people who I think would be keen to help. That's what I think would be the case.
He seems to have played a 1-2 with you there, Ponga.
No, it's 1-2. It's not a 1-2. It's just a fact. I don't wish to. I'm an anti-racist, but I'm not black, and it's a black football hero we're talking of here. I don't like the situations where white anti-racist. I know you're not joking, but that's just the crack. I don't know the people on here. I know you, Satish, and that's important that I say that, because that's a principle of mine, and I wouldn't want anybody to think anything different, really. So might be joking, but I'm taking it seriously. Taking it seriously.
Yeah, we appreciate, Mark's role. Of course, it must be driven from Zambia, which is the best way to do it. We have the history, the full story. We've seen the legend, and Mark's role really is to try and facilitate and open the doors for, the bigger picture, the greater picture to be seen, and we really appreciate that role. And maybe Bwalia now is a good time for her to come in and respond, Satish. I think I've had a lot of airtime, so I'll leave myself and let Bwalia come in, and then maybe come in after.
Bwalia? No. What do you think?
Pardon?
What do you think? How do you think that your father's legacy, and including the things a lot of people didn't know, should be commemorated?
Okay, like I earlier alluded in our meeting before, I think it should start with us. So as Football Association, maybe we should run some sort of a tournament, get to educate people more. Something like the other one that is run under somebody's name, maybe Faz could do something like that, because I think we don't have that much information. We only end on knowing he scored 107 goals in a season. Not a lot of people know more other than that. So it would be a very, very important for Faz. It should start at home. So Faz, first of all, should come in, do something about this. Then it can go out to the world. I mean, if it doesn't start from us, I don't think people in the UK would get to know anything about him if we as Zambians do not know anything about him.
Well said, Walia. I think that's a good start for the Football Association. And of course, we who are in the media, our role is to, put out as much information. When Chitalu played, it was an era where, to see news from England needed somebody to put an English newspaper on a ship, or on a plane that would come 2 weeks later. Now we have, all sorts of social media, we have digital media, we have to put the story out worldwide. We have to let people know. We have to write books. We need to do documentaries. It would be lovely to have a great statue of him outside our national stadium, because he really deserves that. That sort of recognition, name a stand after him. I know the railway ground in Kabwe has been renamed after him, but he was such a huge impact on the national level that it has to go beyond his local club or his local ground and become a national issue, and be driven by this. There's 16 million, 17 million Zambians, a lot of them abroad. We just need to carry this message. We need to talk to FIFA. We need to talk to the Confederation of African Football. We need to sing this song. And Satish, you've done a wonderful job in reviving the legacy of Chitalu, which had almost been forgotten. We need to really put this out and publicize and inform. And, I believe that, with all the hard work, he will finally get his place in history, and it will be recognized worldwide.
On that note, the stadium needs to be renamed again. It is, I believe, named the Godfrey Uka Chitalu 107 Stadium. It needs to be 116, as this is one of the things that has been missed. When Godfrey's year or his season was actually put up against Messi's year and also against Gerd Muller's year, both of them got 366 days. Muller scored 85 and Messi 91 in that particular year, calendar year. Because it wasn't noted that the 107 was just the season record, and that at that time, the Zambian season was played within the calendar year, he only got 309 days. If you give him the full 366, this African record of the African Cup of Champions clubs, where he scores 9 goals in the tie, then an African Champions Club record, may still be, but definitely the 7 he scored in the 9-0 win in Ndola was an African record that still stands to this day. Those are the missing goals. That is what takes it up to 116. So shouldn't we be talking about 116 and actually saying there are 2 world records that Godfrey Chitalu set in 1972, 2 separate world records, the single season world record and the calendar year world record?
Yeah, now that we have the understanding that the world records spoken about were based on a calendar year and not a football season, I think it opens up the debate, and of course it opens up the 9 goals. They now come into the picture. So that is definitely something we have to factor in, something we have to consider, something we have to communicate, and speak to the official historians at FIFA as well, and have that acknowledged. And I think the facts are there. The information is there now. We just have to package it and take it to them and have the 107 increased officially to a 116. It's very much doable based on the records and the history that's there. So very much we could see, Chitalu's record be upped by the 9 goals that were really, really critical for the success of Cabo Warriors, but also for his records in world history.
Mark, you have written some books about football back in the 19th century and also in the early 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
What was the verification of the goals that had been claimed to have been scored? How were these actually verified?
There was no serious verification, but the way that it came about was largely what was reported in the press, and that's what has been passed down through the press. So much of that early records is inaccurate. Take my own football team, Sunderland, which has claimed to have been formed in 1879. We've shown that it was formed in 1880. We've got the reports of the minutes where it was formed. We've got the local newspaper report. The football club and the local media refused to recognise, even the media who refused to recognise the actual formation of the date 1880 is the same newspaper which reported on it in 1880. So they don't recognise their own records. It's a tricky and difficult one. Ultimately, it comes down to the campaigning that you actually do in order to demonstrate that the facts that you've established are accurate. It's about establishing credibility. And in my case, the establishment of the credibility of the Kenny Davenport first ever goal means that very often now the newspapers, if there's a dispute about various bits of things around the history of various games, the newspapers will come to myself and take comment from me. So I've gone from being a football fan to historian to becoming an accomplished football historian to an award-winning accomplished football historian. I've never won an award in my life, to be frank. It would be nice to do so eventually, But I think I'll be long dead before that's the case. So it is just a matter of the struggle, as they would say. There's no other way of doing that. Establish the facts and then basically have a long, sometimes ultimately unsuccessful battle. And it's about convincing fans that what you're saying is true, because it's from that sort of development upwards that the authorities feel that they must act. The Kenny Davenport stuff, when we finally did achieve it and establish it, the publicity for that was immense. I mean, it just incredible, the amount of information that went around the world about Kenny Davenport. It was the cornerstone of the 125th celebrations of the Football League. And whilst that's it's been blown out the water by the Premier League, of course, since 1992, it still was massive. I mean, the amount of places that the thing went was just staggering, really, to be honest. It was absolutely staggering. So that would be my advice. I mean, we're currently we've more or less established now that Fred Spikesley scored the first hat-trick for England against Scotland. All of the newspaper reports at the time didn't give him his third goal. What we've been able to do is we then went back and we looked at people's autobiographies 20 years later, and they all say he scored the fifth or the third goal for him. So by default, it's become the case. FIFA don't quite recognise it. The FA are sort of they're getting there, basically. Our credibility through the Spikesley website, and we would use that to advertise the Chitalu records. Happy to do that. Is such that when Crystal Palace recently claimed to be the oldest league club in the world, it was our website, me and Clive, who basically demolished that claim and made them out to be the liars that they were. There's no other words that can be put to it. They wrongly used the historical, some badly worked historical pieces of work. So it's about the credibility. Lies is too strong a word, I would say. Let's just say it wasn't accurate. Thank you.
Well, part of the reason I asked that question is obviously Godfrey Chitalu wasn't the first person to hold the record for a single season or for the year. But the only time verification was demanded was him. And to the horror of those hoping that African record keeping was going to be as it usually is, and I don't mean any great offense by that, it is pretty bad. I think Ponga would agree with that normally, but with one critical exception, and that is Godfrey Chitalu 1972. It's the one time you have research done where they show the stadium, the competition, the score, the whole works by going back and checking the newspapers, which at the time was the only way you could do it. I mean, we're talking before there was internet and before there was TV, effectively. I mean, there was, but it was very, very rare. So you have the situation where they demand verification, and I have no problem with demanding verification. What I find interesting is nobody's saying, this is the proof that Ferenc Diak scored 66 goals in 1946. And you can go back further to Dixie Dean in 1927. You can go forward to Pele in 1958. Nobody seems to say you've got to verify this. What, as a football historian and a very accomplished one, how do you feel about this?
Well, I might be that, but I'm also live in a real world. I'm aware of prejudices that exist, and I'm aware. I mean, I think I would say that there's no other way to do it except to bring the proof to bear and to try and exert pressure on the people to take those decisions. I feel strongly about the issue of racism and other bits of things, but there's no other way that I can think of to resolve that problem, Satish. I think it's a matter of getting it out as widely as possible and fighting the corner. That's it. that is literally it, really.
Ponga, how do you think the record keeping and records should be acknowledged? Because I think we've established here that there's much more to Chitalu's legacy than the 107 season tally that most people know about. Ponga, did you get that? I think his thing must be frozen. Right. Okay, Walia. Walia? Oh, for goodness sake. Right. Walia, can you sum up your feelings on what you've heard today about your father, and also tell us a little bit about him as a person, because we don't get to hear much of that.
Okay. He definitely was a great family man. He brought my mother's side and his side together. We lived as a big family. He took care of a lot of people. Saw to it that they got an education. That's why it was easy for my aunt to quickly pick it up after his demise, because immediately after his demise, like 2 years later, my mother passed away as well. And we were still young then, so we couldn't take care of ourselves. So it was easy for people to come on board and take care of us and see to it that we got an education, got the grades, and had a stable life like this. So he definitely was a great family man when he's not on the football field. And what I have heard today, I'm really grateful. I have learned a lot, most that I actually didn't know about him. I have learned, and we as a family are grateful for the support from everybody that was included in this birthday celebration of his. I mean, it's the first time this is happening. Of course, we remember him as a family on his birthday, but for something special like this to be done for him, even 27 years after his demise, it's really special for us as a family. So we are really grateful.
Okay, I hope that people who are watching this will appreciate the legacy and legend of Godfrey Chitalu, who is Africa's goal king. He is not just a legend of Zambian football or Kabwe Warriors or even Africa. He is a football legend who deserves to be acknowledged as one of the best to have ever played the game.
Okay, what's going on in Nigeria is really sad. We would, as a nation, as Zambia at large, and as the world at large, love to see peace and harmony restored in Nigeria. Therefore, we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, and whatever it is that they're going through, we hope that they go through it quick and soon so that it may come to an end. And we pray that God be with them through this trying time. We just hope for peace to reign and restore in Nigeria. We love them and God bless them.
Okay, I think that about covers this subject of the lost legacy of Godfrey Chitalu. I hope people have heard things that they didn't know about him before, and they will go away from this believing and investigating further what legacy, the full legacy of Godfrey Chitalu was.
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's about it. I don't think there's. I don't think either of you really want to ask questions of each other now. So, shall we call this one? End this one now. Oh, damn! It's still recording. That's annoying.